The great hall stretched before Commander Thelvan like a monument to glory. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light over the assembled crowd. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds filled the space. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had skin in colors he had never seen before joining the Galactic Council. They all wore their finest clothes, and their military medals gleamed on their chests. Thelvan stood near the back wall, his posture straight and perfect as always. His blue-gray skin caught the light as he adjusted the collar of his formal uniform. The medals on his chest were heavy. He had earned each one through blood and sacrifice. 15 years of service, 32 campaigns. He was a hero among his people, the Valorians. Everyone said so. The ceremony was for veterans of the Integration Wars. That was what they called it now. The wars that brought humanity into the galactic community. It sounded clean when you said it that way. Integration, like mixing water with water, not like the brutal years of fighting that still haunted his sleep. A voice spoke through the hall's speakers announcing another award. Thelvan barely listened. He had been to too many of these ceremonies. They all felt the same. The same speeches about honor and duty. The same applause. The same carefully chosen words that never mentioned the screaming, the blood, or the way bodies looked when they stopped moving. Someone touched his arm. Thelvan turned, his military training making the movement smooth and controlled. A human stood beside him. The man was shorter than Thelvan, with dark hair starting to show gray at the temples. His eyes were brown and calm. He wore a simple suit with only 2 medals pinned to his jacket. "Commander Thelvan?" the human asked. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Yes," Thelvan replied. His translator implant made the words flow naturally between them. "I'm Day-One. I served during the Integration Wars, too. I wanted to meet you." The human smiled, but it was a small smile. Tired around the edges, Thelvan nodded. He was used to this. Veterans often sought him out at these events, wanting to share stories or simply stand near someone who understood. "What unit were you with?" "The Iron Wolves. We operated in the Chronos sector mostly." Something cold touched Thelvan's spine. The Iron Wolves. He knew that name. His hand trembled slightly before he caught it and forced it still. His jaw tightened. He took a breath through his nose, counting to 3 the way his meditation instructor had taught him. "You know of us?" Day-One asked. He was watching Thelvan carefully now. Yes. I encountered your unit several times." The words came out rougher than Thelvan intended. Day-One nodded slowly. "We heard about you too. The Blue Commander, they called you, said you were the best tactician the Valorians had." There was no pride in his voice, no challenge, just a simple statement of fact. The ceremony continued around them. Someone was giving a speech about sacrifice and the bonds forged between species. The crowd applauded at the right moments, but Thelvan barely heard any of it. His mind was pulling him backward toward memories he had buried deep. "What do you do now?" Thelvan asked, desperate to keep the conversation in the present. "I'm an engineer. I help build water treatment facilities on colony worlds." "Simple work." "Clean work." Day-One looked down at his hands. "I like working with things that help people live instead of—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "That sounds good," Thelvan said. He meant it. They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, other veterans talked and laughed. Some shared stories. Some just stood together, finding comfort in the presence of others who understood what war really meant. But Thelvan felt no comfort. His hearts were beating too fast. Both of them. The way they always did when panic started to creep in. "Are you all right?" Day-One asked. "Fine, just tired. These ceremonies can be exhausting." The lie came easily. Thelvan had told it many times. Day-One looked like he wanted to say something else, but he just nodded. "I understand. It was good to meet you, Commander." He held out his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thelvan looked at the hand for a moment. It was scarred. Old burns marked the back of it, and one finger bent at a slight angle, like it had healed wrong. A soldier's hand. An enemy's hand. No, a former enemy's hand. They were all on the same side now. That was what everyone said. He reached out and shook it. The human grip was firm but not aggressive. Professional. After a moment, they let go and Day-One walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Thelvan stood frozen. His hand still tingled where they had touched. The Iron Wolves. Chronos sector. How many of his soldiers had died fighting that unit? How many humans had he killed who wore that same patch on their shoulders? The ceremony ended eventually. People began to leave, talking in small groups as they headed toward the exits. Thelvan moved with them, his body going through the motions while his mind was elsewhere. He shook hands with a few other veterans. He nodded at a speech from a council member. He did everything that was expected of him, but inside, something had cracked. On the transport back to his quarters, Thelvan sat alone in a private compartment. The city lights of the station flashed by outside the window. He stared at his reflection in the glass. His face looked calm, controlled, perfect as always. His hands were shaking in his lap. He thought about Daewon's quiet voice. The tired smile, the scarred hands, an engineer now, building things instead of destroying them. It seemed impossible that this soft-spoken human had been one of the Iron Wolves. That unit had been legends among the Valorian military. They fought like demons. They never retreated. They made every meter of ground cost blood. Thelvan closed his eyes, but that was a mistake. Behind his eyelids he saw fire. He heard screaming. He smelled the bitter smoke of human weapons and the sharp metallic scent of blood, both human and Valorian. His breath came faster. He opened his eyes and forced himself to breathe slowly. Count to 3, hold, count to 3, release. The meditation technique helped, but only a little. When the transport reached his quarters, Thelvan walked to his door with steady steps. He nodded to a passing diplomat. He smiled at the building's attendant. He was the perfect picture of a decorated commander returning from a pleasant evening. The door closed behind him, and he was finally alone. Thelvan stood in the center of his quarters, still wearing his formal uniform with all its heavy metals. The lights were set to a soft evening glow. Everything was neat and organized exactly as he had left it. His quarters were like him, controlled, orderly, showing nothing of the chaos underneath. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Kronos Ridge, a simple name for a place where so many had died, both his people and theirs, the Iron Wolves. His hand touched the window, and he realized it was still shaking. Thelvan, the decorated commander, the hero of the Valorian military, the tactical genius who had never lost a major campaign, stood alone in his quarters and felt the first crack in the wall he had built around his memories. It was going to be a long night. Thelvan sat on the edge of his bed, still in his uniform. He had tried to sleep. He had laid down, closed his eyes, and waited for rest to come. But sleep stayed away, like an old friend who no longer visited. Instead, his mind kept circling back to one name: the Iron Wolves. He stood and walked to his desk. Maybe work would help. He pulled up reports on his datapad, scanning through diplomatic briefings and supply requests. The words blurred together. He couldn't focus. The clock showed it was 3 a.m. station time. He should sleep. He had meetings tomorrow, important ones. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw that ridge, Kronos Ridge. Thelvan set down the datapad and rubbed his face with both hands. Maybe if he let himself remember, the memories would stop pushing at the edges of his mind. Maybe if he looked at them directly, they would lose their power. That was what his therapist had said years ago before he stopped going to sessions. He took a deep breath and let his mind go back. The ridge had been a strategic position. Intelligence reports said a small human force was holding it, maybe 50 soldiers at most. They had supplies and weapons, but nothing that could stand against a proper Valorian assault. The plan was simple: overwhelm them with numbers and superior technology, take the ridge and push forward to the next objective. Thelvan had commanded 500 soldiers that day. Good soldiers, trained and experienced. He remembered feeling confident as they approached. This would be quick, professional. They would give the humans a chance to surrender first. If they refused, well, that was their choice. The humans had refused. Thelvan remembered the first wave moving up the ridge. He had stayed back with the command unit, watching through tactical displays and camera feeds. His soldiers advanced in perfect formation, their shields glowing blue in the early morning light. Human bullets pinged off the shields, not enough to worry about. Then the explosions started. The humans had buried mines everywhere, not military-grade mines that the sensors could detect. Crude things made from whatever they could find, fertilizer bombs, propane tanks rigged with detonators, old artillery shells connected to pressure plates. They turned the entire ridge into a death trap. His first wave lost 30 soldiers before they even saw a human. Thelvan had adjusted his tactics. He sent drones ahead to clear the mines. He called in artillery to destroy the human positions. He did everything by the book. But the humans just kept fighting. They used the rubble from the artillery strikes as cover. They popped up, fired, and disappeared before return fire could hit them. They set fires to create smokescreens. They played recordings of voices to make his soldiers think there were enemies in places where there were none. They fought smart and mean and desperate, and when his soldiers finally pushed into their positions, the humans fought hand to hand. Thelvan stood in his quarters, his fists clenched at his sides. He could still see it. A Valorian soldier, trained in combat since childhood, 3 times stronger than any human, facing a human who should have been easy to kill. But the human had rigged himself with explosives. When the Valorian grabbed him, the human detonated the bomb, both of them gone in a flash of fire. It happened 3 times that day. 3 humans who killed themselves just to take a Valorian with them. The battle lasted 14 hours. By the time Thelvan's forces took the ridge, the sun was setting. The ground was torn up and smoking. Bodies lay everywhere, most of them Valorian. He had started with 500 soldiers. He finished with 320. The humans had started with 50. Only 12 survived to be taken prisoner. Thelvan walked to his window and pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He could see his reflection in the window, ghost-like against the stars beyond. He looked tired, old, even though Valorians lived much longer than humans. He remembered walking through the captured position. His medical officer had been treating the wounded, both Valorian and human. One of the human prisoners was young, barely old enough to be a soldier. His face was covered in dirt and blood, and his uniform was torn. He was missing 2 fingers on his left hand. "What's your name?" Thelvan had asked through a translator. The young human had looked up at him with exhausted eyes. "Hyunwoo, why didn't you surrender? You had no chance of winning." Hyunwoo had smiled, but there was no humor in it, just tiredness that went deeper than physical exhaustion. "We weren't trying to win, Commander. We were trying to make you pay for every step forward. We were buying time for civilians to evacuate from the next city." Thelvan had stared at him, not understanding. "You killed yourselves for time? Just time? Every hour we held you here was another hour for children to get on transport ships, for families to escape." Hyunwoo had coughed and blood flecked his lips. "Was it enough time? Did they get away?" Thelvan hadn't answered. He hadn't known. He had been focused on the battle, not on what was happening in the cities behind human lines. Later he learned that the evacuation had succeeded. More than 20,000 civilians had escaped because of the delay at Kronos Ridge. 20,000 lives bought with 50 soldiers. In his quarters, Thelvan felt his legs weaken. He sat down heavily in his desk chair. His hands were shaking worse now. He held them out in front of him, watching them tremble. A commander's hands, a killer's hands. He had won the battle at Kronos Ridge. It was called a victory in all the official reports. He had received a medal for it. But sitting in his quarters 15 years later, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a nightmare that he couldn't wake up from. Hyunwoo had survived his injuries. Thelvan had made sure of it. He ordered the medical team to treat the human prisoners with the same care as Valorian wounded. He didn't know why he had done that. Maybe because the boy's courage had impressed him. Maybe because even then, something about the humans unsettled him in a way no enemy ever had. He wondered where Hyunwoo was now. Was he still alive? Had he gone home after the war? Did he have the same nightmares that Thelvan had? The clock showed 4 in the morning. Thelvan knew he wouldn't sleep tonight. Maybe tomorrow night either. The memories were fully awake now, and they wouldn't go back to sleep easily. He thought about Day One, the quiet engineer who built water treatment plants. Had he fought like Hyunwoo? Had he been willing to die for time? For civilians he would never meet, for a cause that looked hopeless? The Iron Wolves had been famous for never retreating. Every position they held became a slaughterhouse. Not because they were cruel, but because they were determined. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Thelvan had fought them 4 times during the war. 4 times, and each battle had cost him more soldiers than any other enemy he faced. The Iron Wolves weren't the best equipped. They weren't the most trained. but they were the most terrifying because they simply wouldn't stop, wouldn't break, wouldn't surrender. He stood and walked to his closet. In the back, in a locked box, he kept things from the war, things he couldn't throw away but couldn't look at. He opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were photographs, battle reports, a few medals he had never worn, and at the bottom a piece of cloth, gray fabric with a wolf's head embroidered on it. He had taken it from a destroyed human position years ago. He didn't know why he kept it. Thelvin held the patch in his hands. The thread was faded now and the edges were burned, but the wolf still looked fierce, still looked ready to fight. He thought about meeting Daewon again. They would probably see each other at other conferences, other ceremonies. Would he be able to look the human in the eye, knowing what he knew, knowing what he had done to men who wore this same patch? The station's lighting system began to brighten slowly, simulating morning. Thelvin realized he had been standing there holding the patch for over an hour. He carefully placed it back in the box and locked it away. He looked at himself in the mirror. His uniform was wrinkled from sitting in it all night. His eyes were red and tired. He looked like what he was, a soldier haunted by his past. Today he had diplomatic meetings. He would shower, put on a fresh uniform, and be the perfect commander everyone expected. He would smile and shake hands and talk about peace between species. But inside he would still be standing on Kronos Ridge, watching smoke rise from the positions where 50 humans had held off 500 Valorians, still wondering what kind of species fought like that, still trying to understand the humans who scared him more than any enemy he had ever faced, and still shaking. 3 days passed since the ceremony. 3 days of meetings and diplomatic talks on Axiom Prime, the neutral station where dozens of species came to discuss peace and trade. Thelvin moved through his duties like a machine. He spoke when spoken to. He reviewed documents. He attended conferences. But his mind was somewhere else, trapped in memories he couldn't escape. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours any night. Coffee helped. Stimulants helped more. He was running on empty, but no one seemed to notice. Valorians were good at hiding their feelings. It was part of their culture. Stay strong. Show no weakness. Be the rock that others could depend on. On the 4th day, he saw Daewon again. It was during a lunch break between sessions. The station had a large dining area where delegates from different worlds could eat together. Thelvin had grabbed a tray of food he didn't really want and was looking for a quiet corner when he heard his name. Commander Thelvin? He turned. Daewon stood there with a tray of his own, wearing casual civilian clothes. The human looked rested, peaceful even. It made something twist in Thelvin's chest. May I join you? Daewon asked. Thelvin wanted to say no, wanted to make an excuse and leave. But his training kicked in. Of course. They sat at a small table near a window overlooking the station's garden level. For a moment they ate in silence. Thelvin pushed food around his plate, not really eating. Daewon ate slowly, seeming comfortable with the quiet. You look tired, Daewon said finally. Busy schedule, Thelvin replied. I know that look. That's not busy tired. That's war tired. Daewon's voice was gentle, not accusing. Just observant. Thelvin set down his fork. What do you want from me? Nothing. I just thought you might want to talk. The other night when I mentioned the Iron Wolves, you looked like you'd seen a ghost. I fought your unit. Several times. The words came out harder than Thelvin intended. Daewon nodded. I know, we heard about you. The Blue Commander who never lost. We were terrified of you. That made Thelvin look up sharply. You were terrified? Of me? Of course. You were brilliant. You adapted to everything we tried. You had better weapons, better armor, more soldiers. We knew we couldn't beat you. Daewon took a drink of water. We were just trying to slow you down, buy time. Make you think twice about the next push forward. You talk about it so calmly now. 15 years changes things, plus a lot of therapy. Daewon smiled sadly. I don't sleep well either, Commander. I see faces sometimes. Valorian faces. Young soldiers I killed. I wonder if they had families. If someone missed them when they didn't come home. Thelvin's chest felt tight. Why are you telling me this? Because maybe you need to hear that we were scared too. That we didn't feel like heroes. We felt like people doing terrible things because we didn't see another choice. Before Thelvin could respond, another human approached their table. This one was a woman older than Daewon, with short dark hair showing streaks of gray. She wore a simple dress and carried herself with quiet confidence. Sorry to interrupt, she said. Daewon, I've been looking for you. Oh, is this Commander Thelvan? Bora, this is Commander Thelvan. Commander, this is Bora. She was a combat medic during the war. Now she works with Veteran Mental Health Services. Bora smiled and held out her hand. It's an honor to meet you, Commander. May I sit? Thelvan felt trapped but nodded. Bora pulled up a chair and joined them. I was just at a conference about PTSD treatment across different species. Bora said, It's fascinating how similar the symptoms are even though we're so different physically. Nightmares, anxiety, flashbacks, trauma works the same way in most brains. Do you work with many veterans? Thelvan asked, not really caring but needing to say something. Hundreds now. Human and non-human. The war affected everyone. Bora's eyes were kind but serious. I lost my entire medical team during an evacuation. Firebase Talon, do you know it? The name hit Thelvan like a physical blow. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Firebase Talon, he knew it. Of course he knew it. Yes, I know that place. Bora watched him carefully. You were there? He couldn't lie. I led the assault. The silence stretched between them. Daewon glanced between them, concern on his face. But Bora just nodded slowly. We knew it was coming. We had intelligence that a major force was moving toward us. We tried to evacuate, but there were so many wounded. Human and Valorian prisoners we had been treating. We couldn't just leave them. Thelvan's memory pulled him back. He fought against it, but it was too strong. Firebase Talon had been a medical station. His orders were to capture it intact because it had supplies the Valorian army needed. Medical equipment, medicines. His commanders wanted it taken, not destroyed. The attack had started at dawn. Thelvan remembered being confident. It was just a medical station. The defenders would be medics and support staff. They would surrender quickly, but they didn't. The humans fought like they were defending the most important place in the universe. They used every weapon they had. They turned medical supplies into weapons, oxygen tanks into bombs, medical lasers into cutting tools. They fought from every building, every room, every corner, and at the center of it all had been the medics. Thelvan remembered seeing one through his tactical display. A woman carrying wounded soldiers on her back while firing a pistol with one hand, tears streaming down her face but still fighting, still moving, still refusing to give up. That had been Bora. He was sitting across from her now, 15 years later, and she was talking about PTSD treatment. The commander of the base was named Tai Sung, Bora continued, her voice distant now. Good man, fair. He cared about everyone under his command, human or alien. When it became clear we couldn't hold the base, he ordered everyone to evacuate through the underground tunnels. Then he went to the reactor room. Thelvan knew what came next. He had been there. He remembered his forces breaking through the last defensive line. Remembered reaching the command center and finding it empty except for one human officer standing at a control panel. Tai Sung had looked at him with calm eyes. No fear, no anger, just determination. I'm giving my people 5 minutes to get clear, Tai Sung had said. Then I'm detonating the reactor. You can try to stop me, but the countdown is hardwired. Even if you kill me, the base is gone. Thelvan had ordered an immediate retreat. His soldiers had barely made it out before the explosion. The blast had collapsed half the underground complex. 40 of his soldiers died in the collapse, but hundreds of humans had escaped through those tunnels. Bora had been one of them. I'm alive because of Tai Sung, Bora said quietly. He sacrificed himself so we could live. I think about that every day. About why I got to survive when he didn't, when so many others didn't. Thelvan's throat felt tight. I tried to stop the countdown. My tech specialist tried, but he had locked it completely, I know. I heard the recordings later after the war ended. You tried to save your soldiers. He tried to save his people. Everyone was just trying to save someone. Bora looked at him with understanding that made his chest ache. That's what war is. Good people on all sides trying to protect what they love and everyone losing something. Thelvan stood up suddenly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. People at nearby tables looked over. I need to go. I have a meeting. The lie was obvious. Commander? Daewon started. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Thelvan walked away quickly, leaving his barely touched food on the table. He made it to a private corridor before the panic fully hit. His breath came in short gasps. His heart hammered in his chest. His hands shook so badly he had to lean against the wall. The corridor spun around him. Bora. He had been sitting across from Bora, the woman he had tried to kill 15 years ago, the woman who had fought so desperately to save her patients. and she had been kind to him, understanding. She worked helping veterans now, helping people like him deal with their trauma. How many of the people he had killed were like her? Like Daewon? Like Hyunwoo? Good people who ended up in impossible situations doing what they thought they had to do. Telvan slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. His formal uniform creased. His metals clinked against each other. He put his head in his hands and tried to breathe. Just breathe. Count to 3. Hold. Count to 3. Release. But it wasn't working. The memories were too strong. The faces were too clear. Taesung standing at that control panel, calm and determined. Bora carrying wounded soldiers with tears on her face. Hyunwoo smiling that tired smile when he talked about buying time for evacuations. They had all been heroes. Real heroes. Not the parade ground kind with medals and speeches. They had been people who suffered and sacrificed and did impossible things because they believed it mattered. And Thelvan had killed so many of them. He sat in that corridor for a long time, his perfect composure finally breaking. 15 years of suppressed horror crashing over him like a wave he couldn't fight. Thelvan returned to his homeworld of Valoria 2 weeks after the panic attack in the corridor. He told his superiors he needed personal time. They granted it immediately. He was a decorated hero. He had earned the right to rest. Valoria was beautiful as always. The twin suns cast golden light across the blue grasslands. The crystal cities gleamed in the distance. Everything was peaceful and orderly, just as it had been for thousands of years. Valorians prided themselves on their civilization, their culture of honor and discipline. But Thelvan felt like a stranger in his own home. His family greeted him warmly. His mother prepared his favorite foods. His father talked about local politics and family news. His younger sister showed him pictures of her children. They were all proud of him, their war hero brother and son. They asked him to tell stories of his campaigns, his victories, his famous tactical genius. He couldn't do it. He made excuses. He was tired. Maybe later. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. He walked through the city where he had grown up. People recognized him. They stopped him on the street to shake his hand to thank him for his service. Young Valorians asked him questions about battle strategy and courage under fire. Parents pointed him out to their children as an example of what a true warrior should be. Each compliment felt like a weight on his chest. Each word of praise made it harder to breathe. He went to the war memorial in the city center. Thousands of names carved in stone. Valorian soldiers who had died in various conflicts over the centuries. Many of them had served under his command. He traced his fingers over names he remembered. Good soldiers, friends, people who trusted him to lead them well. How many human names existed on similar memorials? How many Daewons and Boras and Hyunwoos who would never go home? His communicator buzzed. A message from Daewon. Thelvan almost deleted it without reading, but something made him open it. Commander Thelvan, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to apologize if our conversation upset you. That wasn't my intention. I just want you to know that many of us human veterans struggle with the same things you might be feeling. There's no shame in it. War changes everyone who lives through it. If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who understands, I'm here. No judgment. Just one veteran to another. Day one. Thelvan stared at the message for a long time. The kindness in it hurt more than anger would have. He didn't deserve kindness from the people he had fought against. He didn't deserve understanding from someone whose friends he had killed, but the message broke something inside him. Something that had been cracking since the ceremony, since meeting Daewon, since sitting across from Bora. The wall he had built around his memories finally collapsed. He sat on a bench near the memorial and let himself remember everything. All of it. Every battle, every decision, every face. The siege of New Seoul came back to him in full force. It had been the last major battle of the war. The humans' final stand. High Command wanted the city taken to force a surrender. They gave Thelvan an army, 20,000 soldiers, the best equipment, unlimited support. Take the city. End the war. New Seoul had a population of 2 million. Most were civilians. The human military was in shambles by that point, barely organized. Intelligence said the city would fall in a week. It took 47 days. The humans didn't just fight with soldiers. Everyone fought. Factory workers made weapons in basement workshops. Teachers organized civilian defense units. Office workers built barricades in the streets. They turned the entire city into a fortress, and they defended every block, every building, every room. Thelvan had never seen anything like it. In most wars, civilians evacuated or surrendered. They didn't fight. But the humans of New Sol fought like their lives meant nothing compared to the cause. And maybe they did. Maybe they knew they were going to die and decided to make it count. He remembered the schools. The Valorian forces had tried to avoid them, but the humans had fortified them, used them as firing positions. Thelvan's soldiers had no choice but to attack. He remembered giving the order to assault a primary school on the east side of the city. His soldiers had fought their way in, room by room. In the basement, they found civilians. 20 children and 3 adults hiding in a storage room. One of the adults was a woman with a rifle.
She had been teaching before the war.
Now she stood in front of the children with a weapon she barely knew how to use. His soldiers called for her to surrender. She refused. She fired, missing completely. Return fire killed her instantly. The children had screamed. The other 2 adults, a man and an elderly woman, threw themselves over the children, trying to protect them with their own bodies. Thelvan's soldiers held their fire. They called him to the location. When he arrived, he found his troops standing there, weapons lowered, looking sick. These were hardened veterans, but they couldn't bring themselves to harm children. The woman who died was named Jiwoo. Thelvan learned her name later from records. She had taught language and literature. She had written poetry in her free time. She had died trying to protect children who weren't even her own. The children survived. Thelvan made sure of that. He had them evacuated to a safe zone. But Jiwoo's face stayed with him. The determination in her eyes in that last moment. The rifle shaking in her untrained hands. The complete lack of fear. She had been a teacher, a poet. And she died fighting because she thought it was the right thing to do. The siege ground on. Block by block, building by building, Thelvan tried to minimize civilian casualties. He really did. But in urban warfare, there was no clean way to fight. Artillery shells didn't distinguish between soldiers and teachers. Bombs didn't care if the building they destroyed was a military position or someone's home. The humans made it worse by refusing to separate. Soldiers fought alongside civilians. Medical stations treated both. They made everything a legitimate target and then dared the Valorians to fire on it. Thelvan remembered the hospital. It had a giant red cross on the roof, the human symbol for medical facilities. But human soldiers were using it as a command post. His orders were to destroy it. He argued with high command. It was a hospital. There were patients inside, wounded people who couldn't fight. The orders stood. Destroy it. The hospital's chief doctor was named Sang-min. Thelvan learned about him afterward from survivors. Sang-min had stayed at his post even when the evacuation order came. He treated everyone, humans, Valorians who had been captured, anyone who needed help. When the building started to collapse from the bombardment, he was in surgery, trying to save a young Valorian soldier who had been captured weeks earlier. Both of them died when the building came down. Sang-min had been 43 years old. He had a daughter studying medicine on a colony world. He would never see her again because he chose to save an enemy soldier instead of saving himself. Sitting on the bench on Valoria, Thelvan felt tears on his face. Valorians didn't cry. It wasn't part of their culture. Crying showed weakness, but he couldn't stop. The city had fallen eventually. The human defenders broke after 47 days. Most were dead. The survivors were too exhausted to continue. Thelvan walked through the ruins of New Sol with his command staff, surveying the victory. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like walking through a graveyard, buildings reduced to rubble, streets cratered by artillery, bodies everywhere, so many bodies, human and Valorian, lying together in death, all equally broken. The civilian casualties were massive, not because the Valorians wanted to kill civilians. Thelvan had tried to avoid it. But because the humans refused to separate their civilians from their military, they made their entire society a target and then fought to the last breath. Why? Why fight like that? Why sacrifice everything? Thelvan finally understood. They fought because they were protecting their home, their families, their way of life. They fought the way any species would fight if they believed the alternative was extinction or slavery. They fought like people with everything to lose, and he had been the invader, the enemy. The threat they were defending against. The integration wars had been sold as a peacekeeping operation. bringing humanity into the galactic community for their own good, protecting them from themselves. But from the human perspective, it must have looked like conquest, like an alien armada arriving to take away their freedom. No wonder they fought so hard. No wonder they never surrendered. They were defending their children, their homes, their future, and he had killed so many of them. Thelvan sat on that bench until the twin suns set. The golden light faded to purple, then to darkness. Stars came out overhead, those same stars he had looked at from so many battlefields. His communicator buzzed again. More messages. His family wondering where he was. Colleagues checking on him. He ignored them all. He thought about Day One's message, about the offer to talk, veteran to veteran, about the understanding and lack of judgment. 15 years. 15 years of carrying this alone. 15 years of pretending the memories didn't haunt him. 15 years of playing the hero when he felt like a monster. He couldn't do it anymore. Thelvan, the decorated commander, the genius tactician, the hero of Valoria, sat alone in the darkness and finally admitted the truth to himself. He wasn't a hero. He was a soldier who had done terrible things in a war that shouldn't have happened. He had won every battle and lost something more important. 6 months had passed since that night on the bench. 6 months of the hardest work Thelvan had ever done, and he had fought in 32 campaigns. The work was simple but brutal. Facing himself. He found a therapist who specialized in veteran trauma, a Valorian who had served as a medic and understood what war really meant. They met twice a week. At first, Thelvan couldn't talk. He just sat in silence, his hands shaking, unable to put words to the things in his head. But slowly, piece by piece, he started to let it out. The guilt, the nightmares, the faces he couldn't forget. Jiwoo standing in front of those children, Sangmin dying while saving an enemy soldier, Taesung calmly setting the countdown that would end his life, Hyunwoo with his tired smile and missing fingers. His therapist didn't tell him it was okay. Didn't say he was a hero or that he had just been following orders. Instead, she listened. She helped him understand that guilt and trauma were natural responses to unnatural situations, that being a good soldier didn't mean becoming a machine without feelings. You can't change what happened, she told him. You can only decide what you do with it now. What could he do with it? That question kept him awake at night, though the nightmares were less frequent now with medication and treatment. The answer came from an unexpected place. A message from Bora, the human medic. She was organizing a conference on veteran mental health across species. She wanted perspectives from different sides of various conflicts. Would he be willing to speak? Thelvan's first instinct was to refuse, but his therapist encouraged him. Maybe it's time to stop hiding from what you are. You're not just a commander. You're a person who survived war. Share that. So he agreed. The conference was held on Axiom Prime, the neutral station. Hundreds of veterans attended from dozens of species, soldiers who had fought in conflicts across the galaxy. All of them carried similar scars, even if their bodies were completely different. The day of his speech, Thelvan stood backstage, his hands shaking. He had faced armies without this much fear. But talking about his feelings, about his trauma, about the things he regretted, that terrified him more than any battlefield. Day One found him before he went on. The human engineer smiled gently. You don't have to do this, you know. No one will think less of you if you back out. I need to, Thelvan said. I've been hiding for 15 years. It's time to stop. Then I'll be in the front row. Whenever you feel like running, just look at me. We've both been through the fire. You're not alone. Those words steadied him. Thelvan walked onto the stage. The auditorium was packed. He saw human faces, Valorian faces, faces of species he had never encountered, all of them watching him, waiting. He stepped up to the podium and looked out at the crowd. For a moment, his mind went blank. Then he saw Day One in the front row giving him an encouraging nod. Next to him sat Bora, and scattered through the crowd he saw other veterans all waiting to hear what he had to say. My name is Thelvan, he began. His voice was steady, which surprised him. I am a commander in the Valorian military. I have fought in 32 campaigns. I have won every major battle I commanded. I have received more medals than I can count. And for 15 years, I have been drowning. The silence in the room was complete. I led the assault. On Kronos Ridge, I commanded the siege of New Sol. I ordered the destruction of Firebase, Talon. These are considered some of my greatest victories. But when I close my eyes, I don't see victory. I see faces. He told them about Hyunwoo, the young soldier who bought time for civilians to escape. About Bora carrying wounded while tears streamed down her face. About Taesung choosing to die so his people could live. About Jiwoo with her shaking rifle and her determination to protect children. About Sangmin saving an enemy soldier with his last breaths. These were not monsters I fought. They were people. Good people doing what they thought was right. And I killed so many of them. His voice cracked, but he kept going. I followed my orders. I served my species. I did what I was trained to do. But that doesn't make the nightmares stop. It doesn't bring back the dead. It doesn't erase the fact that I caused suffering that will ripple forward for generations. He paused, looking down at his hands. They were shaking, but he didn't try to hide it anymore. Valorian culture teaches us to be strong, to show no weakness, to carry our burdens in silence. I did that for 15 years and it nearly destroyed me. I see therapists now. I take medication for anxiety and depression. I have panic attacks in private corridors. The great Commander Thelvan, the tactical genius, is broken in ways that no amount of medals can fix. He looked up at the crowd. Many were crying. Some human veterans nodded in recognition. A Valorian officer in the back had his head in his hands. I'm telling you this because someone needs to say it. War destroys everyone it touches. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. It doesn't matter if your cause is just or if you're the strongest fighter. War takes pieces of your soul and you never get them back. And pretending otherwise, pretending to be the strong, silent hero, only makes it worse. He took a deep breath. But I'm learning something else too. I'm learning that talking about it helps. That facing these memories instead of hiding from them gives them less power. That connecting with other veterans, even former enemies, reminds me that I'm not alone in this darkness. His eyes found Daewon again. I met a human veteran at a ceremony 6 months ago. His name is Daewon. He was one of the Iron Wolves, a unit that gave me nightmares. When he told me his unit name, I had a panic attack. I couldn't understand how this quiet engineer could have been one of those terrifying soldiers. But then he told me something that changed everything. He said they were scared too, that they didn't feel like heroes, that they carry the same guilt I do. Thelvan's voice grew stronger. That's what I want you to understand. The people we fought against, they're not that different from us. They're veterans too. They have nightmares too. They wake up in the middle of the night seeing faces too. And maybe, just maybe, if we can recognize that shared pain, we can help each other heal. He finished his speech and walked off the stage, his legs barely holding him up. He had done it. He had exposed his wounds to hundreds of strangers. He felt exhausted and raw and somehow lighter than he had in years. Daewon met him backstage with Bora. They didn't say anything, just stood with him. Other veterans approached, Valorian, human, species he didn't recognize. They thanked him. They shared their own stories. They cried together, former enemies united by shared trauma. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Thelvan's speech spread through veteran communities across the galaxy. Other high-ranking officers began to speak openly about their struggles. Mental health resources for veterans expanded. Support groups formed specifically for soldiers from opposing sides of conflicts to help each other heal. Thelvan found himself at the center of a movement he never intended to start. He worked with Bora to develop better treatment programs. He spoke at more conferences. He met with veterans from both sides of the integration wars and other conflicts. And slowly, he began to heal. 3 months after the speech, he traveled to Earth for the first time. He visited New Sol, which had been completely rebuilt. The city was beautiful, modern, full of life. No trace remained of the devastation he had caused, but the memorial remained. It was in the center of the city, a massive wall carved with names. Thousands of them, civilians and soldiers who died during the siege. He walked along the wall reading names. Jiwoo was there. Sangmin was there. So many names he would never know, but whose deaths he had caused. He placed flowers at the base of the memorial, his hands shaking only slightly now. Other people were there too, leaving flowers, paying respects. Some were elderly, survivors of the siege. They looked at him in his Valorian uniform but didn't run or show fear. They just nodded, acknowledging his presence. An old man approached him, human, probably in his 80s now, walking with a cane. His face was weathered and scarred. "You're Commander Thelvan," the old man said. "Not a question. Yes, my name is Kunwu. I lost my wife and both my children in the siege. My grandchildren survived only because a Valorian medical unit treated them when they found them in the rubble. Thelvan's throat tightened. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Kunwu studied him for a long moment. I heard your speech. The recording is everywhere now. My grandson showed it to me. He's studying to be a therapist, wants to help veterans like you. I don't deserve help. Not after what I did. That's where you're wrong, Commander. Kunwu's voice was firm but not unkind. We all carried orders. We all did terrible things. My son was a soldier here. He killed Valorians who were probably just following orders too. War makes killers of us all. The courage isn't in denying what we became. The courage is in facing it, acknowledging it, and trying to make what time we have left count for something better. Tears ran down Thelvan's face, and he didn't wipe them away. I see their faces every night. Your people, the ones I killed. Good, that means you're still human. Well, you know what I mean. Kunwu smiled sadly. The ones who sleep peacefully after killing. Those are the ones to fear. You carry the weight of what you did. That's the price we pay for surviving. But don't let that weight crush you. Use it. Turn it into something that helps others.